Did you see the email I sent you, Shmuel?
Let's talk about it afterwards because this is all being streamed on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
To be recorded.
No problem.
So let's hold on before we do that.
I'm going to mute for a sec.
Okay. Hello, everybody. We're gonna get started. Hello, Lynn, Steve, Julia, my mom Elaine, and Albert. Glad we'll all be learning together today. The topic came out of a shiur that our Torah at the Table group had, where they started talking about Lashon Hara, and the challenge of trying to stop talking about other people, trying to figure out what it means actually to talk about other people. How do you know when you're speaking Lashon Hara? How do you know when you're not speaking Lashon Hara? And what's interesting about this is not only is it extremely hard to stop talking about other people, but in our tradition, we see that it's one of the most important things we can do. It's actually uphold the values of our tradition. I'll start before we jump into the text with this common saying that when you speak Lashon Hara, you're hurting three people. First is, you can kind of guess who they are. First is the person you're speaking against or about. Second is the person you're speaking to, who now that they have this assumption and idea about this other person, they're damaged themselves, and then yourself as well. Also, before we jump into the text, I want to point out in our tradition that we ascribe a lot of power to words. We're made b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. And God, as we say in our tefillot every morning, is she'amar v'haya ha'olam. God is one who speaks and the world is created. And so too, when we speak, when we use our words, we also create worlds. We create an assumption, that people live in about other people and other things. If I tell you that, so-and-so did this or so-and-so did that, that's how you're going to see them. And so the power that our words have is also, part of this conversation of Lashon Hara. So I'm going to jump into the text. I'm going to share my screen so we can all see the source sheet together. Before we jump into it, does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen. We can get started. Okay, at this point, we should all see Lashon Hara 1. And the reason it's 1 is because in making the source sheet, it's clear that we cannot possibly talk about everything about Lashon Hara in one session. But this is a really, really good start. What better place to start than the Torah? So we'll start from Leviticus chapter 19, verse 16. Is there we don't need to just hear my voice today. Is there a volunteer who'd like to read the first line either in Hebrew or in English? Julia, you feel up for reading today? No, Julia says no. Okay,
I'll read for you, Shmuel.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, go for it.
Okay. לא תלך רכיל בימיך, לא תעמוד על דם רעיך, אני השם.
Great. Want to read in English?
You shall not go around as a slanderer among your people, nor shall you stand by while the life of your neighbor is in danger. I am the Lord.
Okay, so just base requirement from the Torah is that you don't talk about other people. It's actually a commandment straight out of the Torah, a negative commandment to say, don't do this. Rachil is an interesting word. This is the word for slanderer. It exists just as the word slanderer. It doesn't, there's no roots, like lirachel means to gossip. It's not Rachel like Rachel, that's with a chet, this is with a chaf. The only word that's connected to it is to peddle. Lirachel can also like a peddler also would use the same verb, like lirachel, to sell wares from place to place. And so you get the sense that maybe gossip is about, spreading information from here. And just like a peddler goes from city to city, so too, gossiping is similar in the sense that it spreads like that. But that's what this word is. It only means to gossip or to slander, which, indicates to us just how important this is that we don't do it. The fact that in our tradition there is, a word just in and of itself for gossiping. So we're going to jump now a few thousand years to the Mishnah Torah. This is Maimonides' major code of Jewish law. He lived for about a half hour, from 1130 to 12 AD. Again, it's like not really a half hour, but he's a 12th century sage. And so this comes straight out of his law code. I'll read it to us. A person who collects gossip about a colleague violates a prohibition, as Leviticus 19:16 states, do not go around gossiping among your people. We just read that. Even though this transgression is not punishable by lashes, and transgressions, rabbinic and Torah, transgressions were punished by all different kinds of things. Almost certainly these lashes never happened. It was just more symbolic. But it's like, even though these transgressions not punishable by lashes, it's a severe sin and can cause the death of many Jews. So if you ever wondered if your words have power, yes, Maimonides says actually, when you speak about somebody, in a sense, it can kill them. So he says, therefore, the warning, do not stand by while the life of your neighbor is in danger, is placed next to it in the Torah. And then says, see what happened because of Doeg the Edomite. So remember, in this verse, it starts with, you shall not go around as a slander among your people. And then, what is this doing here? Nor shall you stand by while the life of your neighbor is in danger. It seems like two very different things, but the Torah juxtaposes them. And Maimonides says, this is not an accident. When you speak about somebody, you are endangering their life. And we're going to see, what we're going to do for the rest of the session is actually read the story of Doeg the Edomite, because he's going to be our, the paradigm of Lashon Hara. And so in this conversation, before we ask, when are we doing it, when are we not doing it, this story of Doeg the Edomite is going to, help us to know exactly what, the power of Lashon Hara is. And and how we know if we're doing it and what its consequences are. So before we jump into the story, I want to hone in on the idea of nor shall you stand by while the life of your neighbor is in danger. In the story of Doeg the Edomite, it's life that's actually taken. People are actually killed. I don't want to give the story away too much. I kind of did, but like that's gonna be the end here. But there's also a way symbolically that people are killed too. We as humans are multifaceted. There's all kinds of things that we stand for, all kinds of wonderful things we do, all kinds of average or bad things we do, but we're full rounded individuals. And when you tell somebody, so and so, even if it's factual and not, and seemingly, harmless, so and so took out a loan today. That's how they're going to see that person. You've now created that person to be, Plony who took out the loan. You've, in a sense, killed the rest of them. Their life now is being summed up in this one, fact that you've shared. Now it gets complicated because there are times when you do need to share information. Let's say somebody comes up to you and says, should I marry, this person? Should I hire this person? Then is it Lashon Hara to share the facts that you know? These are all questions which we can answer in later sessions, because today we're just forming a base to talk about what Lashon Hara is. And so he says, Maimonides ends by saying, see what happened because of Doeg the Edomite, who's our paradigmatic Lashon Hara. So here we go. Doeg the Edomite. Here he is. This is a real life picture of Doeg taken during Israel's first, king's reign. And we're going to see who all these characters are. This is going to be King Saul, who, we can talk about everybody's portrait another time. But this is Saul. These are his warriors, and these are going to be the priests of Ahimelech, of Nob. Okay, so the background of this story is David has just fled a battle and fled capture from King Saul. King Saul is Israel's first king, and he is extremely jealous of David. He is sure that David is going to usurp the kingship from him, and he's scared. However, David started in Saul's house. He was, Saul's primary servant and musician, and was extremely loyal to Saul. Saul, however, wants him dead. And so David has now run away. This is a very colorful and somewhat lengthy story. So this is going to be the last text we do for today, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'll read it for us. It says, then, I'll also view full screen. Look at this. So we can look at, and there's something written in the chat. Is anyone else hearing a noise that sounds like giggling, kind of? Yes, I am. Okay, so then David came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest. I hope it's not too distracting. You can chat again if you still hear it. Then David came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest. And Ahimelech trembled coming to meet David and said to him, why are you alone and no man is with you? And David said to Ahimelech the priest, the king commanded me a matter and said to me, let no man know anything of the business which I am sending you and what I have commanded you. But to the young men I have made known a certain place to meet. Now therefore, what is in your hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or whatever can be found. So David has now fled Saul's capture, and he's found himself in the city of Nob at a temple there, and there's a priest who he's requesting food from. The priest answered David and said, There is no common bread at hand, but there is holy bread, if the young man have indeed been kept from women. So this is bread that's been sanctified. It's been in front of the altar. And so anybody who's had sexual relations can't eat this bread because they're in a state of impurity until they go to a mikveh. So what the priest is saying is, we don't have any bread, but we have the show bread. And if you're in a state of purity to eat it, I can give you that. And David answered the priest and said to him, indeed, women have been kept from us, as previously when I went out, the vessels of the young men were holy, even if it was an ordinary journey. How much more so? Today will their vessels be holy, which is to say they've been doing battle, for weeks now, so they haven't been around anybody except soldiers. So the priest gave him holy bread, for there was no bread there but the showbread that was removed from before the Lord, in order to place hot bread there on the day when it was taken away. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Doeg the Edomite, chief of the shepherds of Saul. Okay, that's going to be our main character here. So to sum up what's happening, David ran away, escaped capture from Saul. He found himself in Nob, and the priest Ahimelech is going to give him food. And Doeg sees this whole thing occur. And this is a big deal because David right now is technically a fugitive. And Ahimelech is helping David the fugitive. Of course, Ahimelech believes in David, and believes him to be, a loyal servant to Saul, and also believes him perhaps, to be the next king. And so he supports David, but Doeg sees this and is nervous about it. So then David said to Ahimelech, is there not a spear or a sword here at hand? For neither my sword nor my weapons did I bring with me, because the king's business was urgent. The priest said, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you struck down the valley of Elah, is here, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you will take it, take it. For there is none other but that here. And David said, there is none like it. Give it to me. Okay, nice full circle story, David and Goliath. Now he has Goliath's sword. But this priest, this is a risky move he did. David is running away from Saul, and the priest is helping David by supplying him bread and weapons. Our story continues. David arose and fled that day from Saul. And he went to Achish, the king of Gath. This is where Goliath is from. And he's going there with Goliath's sword. That is risky. If I were David and I killed Goliath, I would not go to his hometown carrying his sword. Not a good move, David. But this is where he is. He went to Achish, the king of Gath. And he went there because he can't go home, remember, because Saul is going to kill him. So the servants of Achish said to him, is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing with dances for him, saying, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s? So the king of Gath recognizes David, recognizes that he is the warrior who killed Goliath and is a threat. So David is scared here, afraid that he's about to be killed. So David took these words to heart and greatly feared Achish, the king of Gath. Therefore, he changed his behavior before them and pretended to be insane in their hands. And he scratched at the doors of the gate and let the spittle run down his beard. And then said Achish to his servants, you see, the man is acting like a madman. Why then have you brought him to me? Am I one who lacks lunatics, but you brought this one to behave as a madman in my presence? Will this man come into my house? Okay, so Achish sees David, but David pretends to be insane in order to avoid, being put to death by Achish. Achish wants nothing to do with an insane person. So then David departed there, close one, and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down to him there. There gathered to him everyone that was in distress, and everyone that was in debt, and everyone that was discontented. So now David has an army. So he became captain over there. Now there were with him about 400 men. Then David went from there to Mitzpah of Moab. And he said to the king of Moab, please let my father and my mother come forth and be with you until I know what God will do for me. He brought them before the king of Moab, and they lived with him all the while David was in the stronghold. The prophet Gad said to David, do not remain in the stronghold, go to the land of Judah. So David went and came to the forest of Hereth. Okay, so David secures a safe place for his parents, and then his prophet says, you got to go back to Judah. Okay, David's going to be very nervous to go back to Judah because he's, afraid that Saul's going to kill him. Okay, when Saul heard, and if you missed this in the beginning, this isn't a random story. This is, from the book of Samuel, Samuel 1, chapters 21 and 22. You can, use your Tanakh and review this later if you'd like to, but that's where you can find it. So when Saul heard that David and the men who were with him were discovered, Saul was sitting in Gibeah under the tamarisk tree on the hill with his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing around him. Saul said to his servants that stood around him, hear now, Benjaminites, will the son of Jesse, that's David, give every one of you fields and vineyards? Will he appoint you all as captains of thousands and captains of hundreds? You have all conspired against me, and no one revealed to me that my son made a covenant with the son of Jesse. And not one of you is grieved for me, and revealed it to me that my son raised up my servant against me to ambush me, as at this day. So Saul's own son helped David escape, is what he's referring to here, and nobody told him about it. Then, this is where the Lashon Hara comes back. You might have thought this was just story time about David, but this is where the Lashon Hara moment happens. Then Doeg the Edomite, remember him, who was chief over the servants of Saul, answered and said, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, and he inquired of the Lord for him and gave him provisions, and he gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. So let's just ask ourselves, what is Doeg the Edomite doing here? When we think about Lashon Hara, the most common thing we think about is Lashon Hara being false things that we say about other people, lies that we spread about what they've done, or etc. Oh, hello, Rosa. Welcome. Okay. So when we think about Lashon Hara, we often think of it as lies about another person. But here, Doeg the Edomite, our paradigm of Lashon Hara, shows us that it's actually just sharing basic facts about people. That itself is Lashon Hara, and that itself is enough to kill somebody, quote unquote. So this is what he says. He says, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, and he inquired of the Lord for him and gave him provisions and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. And so the king sent to summon Ahimelech, the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's house, the priests that were in Nob. And they all came to the king. Saul said, hear now, son of Ahitub. And he answered, here I am, my lord. Saul said to him, why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, and that you gave him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, that he should rise against me and ambush me, as at this day? Then Ahimelech answered the king and said, and who is as faithful among your servants as David? Who is the king's son-in-law, chief of your bodyguard, and is honored in your house? Did I just today begin to inquire of God for him? Far be it from me. Let not the king assign any blame to his servant, or to all the house of my father, for your servant has known nothing of all of this matter, whether small or great. So Ahimelech is saying, I didn't know he was a fugitive. He's your servant. I was doing it as a way to honor you. But here's the king's response. He says, the king said, you will surely die, Ahimelech, you and your father's house. The king said to the guard standing near him, turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because their hand is with David. And because they knew that he was fleeing, it did not reveal it to me. But the servants of the king would not put forth their hand to attack the priests of the Lord. The king said to Doeg, "You turn and fall upon the priests." And Doeg the Edomite turned and struck with the edge of the sword. Both men and women, children and babies, oxen, donkeys, and sheep, he struck with the edge of the sword. So the end of the story is actually the death of these priests. Remember when Rambam said that Lashon Hara is enough to kill somebody, to cause the death of somebody? And here we see that in this story, people are actually killed. And what happens in the end is symbolic. Doeg is forced to kill them himself. And what Maimonides would say is it's a fitting punishment for him. He killed them in a sense just by speaking about them. And now he has to live with his actions. And so he is now forced to kill them by hand. Okay. So what we learned from this is that Lashon Hara as a base is just speaking about other people, base facts about who they are. I'll also, I want to say to everybody, just stop doing it. Stop talking about other people, but it's extremely hard. And so I'll leave, in a future class, if we do another Lashon Hara class, we'll talk about all the different kinds of ways we can speak about other people. But as a base, the most important thing to know about Lashon Hara is that when you share a fact about somebody, in a sense, you are killing them. Not like Doeg. And I know that's intense. Okay, I know that's intense, to say that. But what you're doing is you're reducing, who they are, their whole person, just down to that little, fact that you've shared about them. And so what I would suggest is, in order to be very careful about it, I know in trying to stop talking about people, there's two things you need. You need a lot of forgiveness, because everybody talks about people. That's what's so hard about this, this mitzvah of not speaking Lashon Hara, is that everybody does it. So the first thing is, when somebody does talk about somebody, or when you are talking about somebody, the first thing is just admitting that it's happening. Saying, I realize that we're talking about another person. That you don't have to do it, but just realizing, number one, that you are indeed talking about somebody. Number two, you can choose not to respond. If you don't know what to say, you don't have to respond. And then the other person may even say, why aren't you responding? You can say, I just don't like talking about other people. That is a beautiful conversation, and the ideal here. And you can also shift. If somebody comes to you trying to speak about another person, move the conversation in another direction. It's really hard, but I'll say it's extremely fulfilling. Life is a lot simpler when you're not, worrying and talking and gossiping about what everybody else is doing. So with that, I'll open it up if there are any questions, comments, concerns, and then we'll close our conversation for today. So if you do have a question or something you'd like to ask, feel free to raise your hand, and I'll call on you. Yes, Steve.
I think an easy way in the modern world to call Lashon Hara is more like speaking behind someone's back.
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, because, sometimes, and I know you don't want to bring it up right now, but, speaking well about someone is also in certain times considered Lashon Hara.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the thing is, if you say, like I said, in the modern world today, speaking behind somebody's back, it like covers the whole gamut of what could be created or who you could kill if you speak behind somebody's back. So
yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Speaking behind somebody's back is probably the the umbrella under which all the different kinds of speaking is going to be categorized. Nice. And anybody else question, comment, concern before we sign off for today? Elaine Rotenberg, my mother. Did you? Wait, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
Well, I didn't say anything.
I know. It looked like you were about to.
What I was going to say was I just think it is, I just sort of want to put bold font or something, or bold whatever, on the point that it is probably one of the most common things that happens and one of the most difficult things for people to not do. And just the idea of, it'll be interesting in a future class to talk about when it is okay, and is it ever okay to say anything about anybody else? When do you share things? When do you share somebody's news? My neighbor just had a baby today, which is true. When do you share news? Do you share good news? Do you share bad news? In the workplace, you have a colleague that lost a parent. Should you tell everybody in the staff about that so they can all send condolence cards? I mean, those are like common day questions.
Yeah.
Those are questions that in my place of work, we struggle with all the time. I've had employees get angry because HR tried to protect their privacy and didn't share that a family member of theirs had died. And then they were hurt because nobody knew. So it would be great to be able to learn and turn to the text to kind of get some of those answers. Those are the harder ones. I mean, the easy ones
that's a gray area here.
Absolutely. Yeah, the easy ones are when somebody says something bad, you should.
I think, first, if we do continue this conversation, first, we'll be determining what's, the black and the white here. And then, we'll look into the host. And then we'll look into the gray area. Rachel and Q, please make me a co-host again, just so I can continue to mute and unmute people. Thank you very much. Okay. And Albert, it's good to see you. I'm glad we were able to learn today.
Enjoyed the conversation, the lesson. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Julia, thank you. And Lynn, thank you for joining us too.
I'm joining from Santa Barbara, California, where it is beautiful today.
Amazing. That's wonderful. Well, enjoy that.
Joining from Florida.
And then Albert and I are in Los Angeles. Steve's in Israel. And wonderful. Okay. Well, everybody, we're going to close out for now. And see you next Thursday. Next Thursday is not about Lashon Hara. Next Thursday, I'm going to teach about bread. We're going to talk about why bread is kind of the paradigmatic food in Judaism. We're going to talk about it on a basic level and then kind of go as deep as we can in 30 to 40 minutes. Should be interesting. We all love bread. Okay. Talk to you soon, everybody.